This is Eating Crow with Pete Durand.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Eating Crow podcast. I'm joined by, actually, this is kind of a stretch guest for me. Paul Watkins is on the program. How you doing, Paul?
Morning. Afternoon for you. How am I a stretch guest?
Well, not very often do I encounter somebody on the LinkedIn platform where I go, this guy's got a really good message, and you've done a lot of things, right? Your background's kind of like, there's people that have a bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do my first marathon, right? Your bucket list is more like a 5-gallon drum list. Like, it's a big list of things you've done. It's crazy. But I like how you've taken your adventures and driven it into a theme. There's a big intellectual component to what you do. You're obviously very well read, very well researched, and how you apply that into the physical side of your life. I don't think a lot of people understand how those correlate.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand a little bit, but I've never seen it quite at this extreme level.
It's interesting. I don't think it's extreme, but every now and then I do sit back and kind of reflect when I post up things about what I've done or pictures or what have you, and then I reflect and go, my God, I really have done quite a lot so far. And it wasn't due to a grand plan. I never set out and said, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to do these things. All of it sheerly has been through almost curiosity. Can I do that? I don't know. What's through that door? I don't know. And just following my nose, career-wise, adventure-wise, business-wise, all those things have simply been just following opportunity and going, what's next? What's next? Can I do that? I don't know. How do I find out? Well, you try and see what happens. And that's led me to accumulate just things that I never dreamed I would ever accumulate.
Well, there's one of my former guests wrote a book called Deliberate Discomfort. He's a former special ops guy, and he's fantastic. And I read the book and said, you got to be on the program, because there are people who are just not comfortable putting themselves in places of discomfort. And that's what you've done.
Yeah, Rick, I've often questioned myself when I'm in the discomfort. There's been plenty of times when you're like, what are you doing? Like, you knew this is how this is going to feel. Like when you're deep in the suck, you're kind of like, why are we doing this? Or the alarm goes off because you got to go hit the trails at 4:00 in the morning or whatever it is to get something done before the kids are up, or what have you. You do question some of your choices, but having that mindset that it's just discomfort, like it's not, sometimes it's painful, but it's not life-threatening. It's not, it's an opportunity, and it's a good reminder every now and then that you actually have the opportunity to do that. Like, yeah, the alarm goes off and you got to get up early and do what have you, but you can, get to do that. So it's often a reminder for me to go, this race is hard, or this climb's difficult, or what have you, but you're here of your own free will, and you have the means and the opportunity to do it. You have zero to complain about, like zero compared to huge swaths of the rest of the population. So it's a good reset.
Yeah, so many of us don't realize, I think, a couple things there. One, life is full of opportunities, not only to challenge your mind, but your body. And then you've seen some places in the world most people read about or dream about or see in a movie.
Yeah,
right?
I still remember the very first time I went to Kathmandu, to Nepal, and it was the first time I'd been to like a place that was really third world when I got out of town and those kind of places. And it really was quite a shock. I was quite young at the time, just to go, the rest of the world doesn't look like your place. Like the rest of the world doesn't look like you. So it was a real shock to begin with. But it set up a behavior that I've kept to this day. Whenever I go somewhere that I haven't been before, the first thing I do is like get off the plane, drop the bags at the hotel, and get outside and walk for a couple of hours. Just get out and go. Clears the jet lag, but just allows you to get out and kind of soak in the sounds and the sights and the smells, and just really center yourself wherever you are. And I found that to be really, really good.
I don't disagree. Most of the places I've traveled through Europe and Asia, I want to go where the locals go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like where would you eat if you were going to dinner with your family tonight?
Yeah.
And they're very willing to show you those places, and are more often extremely generous and gracious and welcome into their homes and their pubs and their restaurants, and offer you the local food. So we have to figure out how this all started, Paul. Right? Like you said, you got a wife, you've got 2 kids. You didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to climb a mountain in Nepal, and then I'm going to go do this horse sled race in the Arctic. I mean, at what point in your life was it through an example of a parent or a friend, or you read how did you become inspired to do these things?
No, when you look at my background, I know a lot of people would like to have a defined answer of, oh, my parents were adventurers and, I spent my childhood, barefoot in the wilderness or anything like that. And none of that's true. I had a very stock standard upbringing to the point of it being, almost boring, like nuclear, um, nuclear family, mum, dad, two kids, mum stayed at home, dad worked. We had a wonderful upbringing, went to good schools, absolutely stock standard normal. I'm not an athlete. I have no athletic background at all. I went through high school as like the least athletic person there. Like I was good at chemistry, maths, debate, chess, theatre, like all the things that scream this person will never do anything athletic in their life. And I got into some of this adventurous stuff as an exit for work. Like I ended up in business. I'm a pharmacist by trade originally, but I was an okay pharmacist, but I was a very good business person. So I ended up running, owning, building big businesses. And that got me to a point where I kind of spent mid 20s to mid 30s. I often say I worked the equivalent of like 20 years in 10 years. I just worked full time. Like if there was a minute available, I worked at them, my own businesses, and I ran them like 24/7, 365.
Mm-hmm.
But I did that and reached a point where I literally woke up in hospital one day and I'd worked myself to complete and utter destruction. And the doctors are like, well, it's taken us a few days, but we've figured out what's wrong with you. You just need to slow down. Like that's what's wrong with you. It's enough. And you have that realization of if you die with the most money, you don't win. You don't get a medal. Someone will go, he worked really hard. Can we find another one, please? And they'll all move on. So as a reflection on that, I went out and said, I've got to get away and just buy myself some mental space and emotional space to recalibrate and understand what are you going to do? Like you can't do this forever. Like is this it? Do you just do this for the next 3 decades and then try and do all the stuff you want to do? So I went out and did something very, very basic. I started okay, I'll go for a little run during my lunch break. And then, okay, well, I'm going to go for a longer run on the weekend. And then you do a half marathon. And then I went and did a really, really basic trek in Nepal. And you realize that you feel like a very different human when you allow yourself to go out and have some of those experiences. And so I kind of iterated up. I did the Kokoda track, which is a famous jungle track in New Guinea here, just off the northern coast of Australia, and loved that and came back and went, you know what? I have no intention or desire to die at work. Like I'm going to sell up and take a huge left turn in my entire career. And I did that. I kept the buildings, the freeholds of the buildings, the businesses, and then sold the businesses and actually went and learned a trade. Just got on the tools for a couple of years, learning how to renovate and semi-work as a chippy. And then followed the adventure thing going, that made me feel really good. What's next? What could I do next? I climbed that or did that trek. What's kind of the next step up from that? And just iterated with no great plan other than what is the next step and how many doors does that open? And then just went through that door to see what was behind it. And that kind of led to a series of events that allowed me to build a really unique set of skills that opened a whole vast bunch of doors. And then it's a case of, well, pick a door. Let's go do some stuff.
Now, when you think of all of the treks, the trips, the climbs, the hikes that you've done, if you're sitting in front of someone who's never contemplated anything like this, and I like the backstory about how, I came from a very normal upbringing, very solid family, but this evolved.
Yeah.
How do you help someone start that path to evolution? To me, you kind of had a life-changing moment. Right. This is why I knew there was an eating crow moment somewhere in here, right? You worked your bone to death, woke up in the hospital and someone said, hey, you're doing this the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, I share with them visually of that Kokoda track that I've mentioned. I've done that twice and the 2 times are 10 years apart. And when you look a photo of me doing it the first time, I'm a dumpster fire. Like I look like I've got no idea what I'm doing. I'm not in good shape. Like the sweat's pouring off me. I had a porter help me carry my bag. Like it wasn't great. It got done. But 10 years later, I look like a very different person. Very fit, carried on a big pack, looked like I'm having a ball, took a couple of mates, all those kind of things. And the lesson I try and share with that is that is a finished product. And if you just look at that photo from the second time I did it, it's very easy to tell yourself a story that's completely and utterly wrong. oh,
Yeah.
Paul, I'd love to go do something like that. But I look at that guy and he's fit, it's a big backpack, and he looks like he's enjoying it. Yet that guy looks like that because he spent 10 years being absolutely rubbish at it. It's a finished product and you're a work in progress. And
Sure.
that's the point. Like, don't tell yourself a story that's wrong based on someone else's snapshot, static, finished product.
100%.
Understand the backstory. Like, I literally, the first thing I did was try and run 5 kilometers because I was overweight, I was unhealthy, diet was a disgrace. I was not good at any of this. So we start really, really small, and then you just iterate up from there. And at some point, you'll find an exit ramp that works for you, and that's okay. And I'm still iterating, and that's okay. But it really is that point of showing people that you don't have to have a genetic gift or background or whatever it is. You start where you start. You're a work in progress, and you tell yourself a better story as you go.
Now, you've got a wife you mentioned is a principal at a primary school. 2 boys at 5 and 8. Is that right?
Yep.
5 and 9. Yeah.
5 and 8. Yep.
When they see you, in one of your posts, which was fantastic, is you laid all of your gear out.
Yep.
And you, what I think the image, 1,000 words, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words. That image alone showed the complexity of the race you were about to do.
Mm-hmm.
It also showed, because of every single component that you packed was there for a reason, right? For safety, for performance, or for survival. So there's so much that goes into this mentally. I think a lot of people would punt right there. Like, if I've got to bring all this stuff, there's a lot of ways something bad could happen.
Yeah.
So my question is, as you're laying this out and you pack this, and your kids, who are fairly young, look at this, how do they process that? I mean, what are they thinking? How are you explaining this to them? What part of the journey are they on with you?
It's been really interesting, and something came up this week, like literally this week, which really, really surprised me. So obviously I was mountain climbing and racing before they were born. So they've kind of grown up in that and have an understanding that Dad does these things.
Mm-hmm.
But the type and scale of things that I do and the regularity with which I do them has changed as my life has changed as you get married and as you have kids,
Sure.
because your risk reward profile changes and you have an understanding you're playing with chips that aren't all yours, and you have some responsibilities, and you need to respect the relationships that exist on that side of your ledger as well.
Well said.
So the things I like, I think my kids are young, that young that they don't quite comprehend the scale and the detail of what I'm doing. I love the fact that they understand that Dad has a physical practice every day. It's normal to get sweaty and exercise every single day, and that's a normal behavior. Like that saying, normal is whatever you tell your kids it is. It's whatever they see as normal. And our kids go, oh yeah, we do exercise every day. So if I'm in the gym, they're normally hanging off a bike, or they've got a ski erg, or they're hanging off the roller, or they're doing something in there, doing their thing or what have you. But my 8-year-old Campbell said to me literally this week, just out of nowhere, he said, oh, those big races that you do, Dad, are you proud of those? Which I thought was a really deep question for an 8, just,
Sure
in between, like, oh, I've got this new Pokemon card and can I watch a show when I get home? And are you proud of doing your races? It was out of nowhere.
How did you respond?
I said, I'm proud of the work that I do and it makes me feel good. Like I'm proud of the effort that I put in. Like, we try and separate the pride as such from the result and the effort. What did he tell me the other day? Same thing. He achieved something in a game he's playing. And he said, are you proud of me, Dad? And I said, no, I'm not proud of you for getting that. That's just a game and it's just a thing. But I'm proud of the fact that you worked really hard at it for weeks to get it. That's what I'm proud of. So we try and separate the outcome, because you don't always get the outcome. You don't always summit. You don't always get the finish or what have you. But to get them to understand that I'm really proud of the effort and the work that you put in, because that's where all the value lies. So as I get older, as they get older, I hope that's what they pull out of what I've done versus, oh, Dad summited that or won that race or finished that or whatever it is. It's trying to separate the effort from the result.
So, I mean, that right there is a TED Talk. And I know you've done some TEDx talks. But the key, and a lot of my podcasts, a lot of my posts are about parenting. I've done really poorly in some things in my life. I've done okay in some areas. Being a dad was something I took serious from day one, and I've been all in on it, right? So not perfect, but it's an area where I look back and go, I've got amazing kids. I'm blessed, and that starts when they're younger.
Yep.
And it starts primarily with your actions way more than your words, right?
Being a parent terrifies me. It absolutely terrifies me. Like, I'll hang off for the biggest mountain you got. That's fine. But I'm like, being a parent scares the daylights out of me, because you just that's the thing. Like, I can't screw that up. Really, you're right. It's 24/7, and it's not just when you're dealing with them. You realize that they're recording you 24/7, and everything you say and your interaction with everyone else when they're near you, they're on the whole time. So that, look, I'm very, very fortunate in that, because my wife works and I play the role of stay-at-home dad. I do the drop-offs and pack the lunches and the pickups and the sport days and that, because I'm able to do that, which I love. But it's also a responsibility to do that and guide them and direct them, but you want them to be their own person. So it's that real juxtaposition of, I know what the real world's like. I know what gaps and things we need to fill and how I want to hone you guys. But I also don't want to be that parent that's trying to fit you into a particular mold because I think that's right for you, because I'll get it wrong. So how do I get you right but not overcook it, but not undercook it? And I don't know. Like, we're still way early in the journey, so stay tuned.
Well, I've all mine are up and out of the house. I've got a grandson, so we've got some.
You're through. You made it.
We made it through. We made it through the gauntlet. My kids apparently still like to hang out with us, which is great.
Yeah.
But all three of them are very different. And one of my eating crow moments was partly what inspired the podcast. Is I was trying to communicate with my oldest son, who's the second. He's the middle child, the way I would have expected to be communicated to by my dad, or I thought it was a template. Like, you just did that.
Yep.
And it wasn't registering.
No.
Right. It didn't mean I changed the rules or the boundaries or the guidelines or the standards at all. It just meant he's not responding to this communication. And that's on me. He's 14 years old. He doesn't have a communication style. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a second child, man. They get you every time.
Yeah. Especially when they slam him in the middle, right? Classic, But I said to my wife, after one particular conversation, I said, like, I don't feel like I'm reaching him, and I've got to figure out how to do that. And I really looked inward and said, all right, I gotta do this. And boy, I'll tell you, what a game changer. And we had a good relationship. It just, I knew we were at a point where it could have gone in a different direction.
Yeah. And that's with a good foundation already. Like,
correct. Absolutely. We did have a good foundation. There was my kids, I'm very blessed. If I told you the 4 stories I have of my children where I'm like, I'm not sure if I would have done that right. People would laugh and go, really? That's it? And I'm sure there's a lot I don't know. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
But, you're right. You want them to be who they are. But I think it's very important as parents to make sure that whatever morals, values, or ethics that you believe are important are instilled in them, and then they make their own choices.
Yeah.
But if you don't give them the foundation, then you've really set them up. There's no way they can make the right choice if you haven't given them the foundation.
And I forget that people like, my mum's like, what are you going to do if Campbell wants to climb Everest? I'll probably carry his bags.
Yeah.
But what if he does want to do it? I don't care. I don't care if they never do anything of the scale or style that I've done in my life at all. I just want them to make their own decisions and have the skill of making great decisions. That's all I want. Like, then they can choose and do whatever they like. But if I can embed, like you said, if I can give them the frameworks and then let them navigate from there, I'm stoked with that. That's okay. Tick that. I'm happy with that. Versus, I really hope they turn out to be a doctor. Like, I just want you to make the best decisions you can for you and be equipped with the mental and emotional tools to deal with all of that. If I can get that right, I'll take that.
Yeah, no question about it. I think the principles we try to instill in our kids is whatever you decided to do, whether it was an individual sport or debate or violin or piano or whatever it would be, recognize that in some of the situations, other people will be depending on you. If you're on a team, right, you go to practice, you work hard, you show up, you try in the games because your team's depending on you. The only time you will hear from me after a game, any utter of disappointment, is not if you didn't score a goal or make the most baskets. If you didn't try, you'll hear about it from me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that might not mean it. Maybe that's not your thing. Well, let's go find your thing. But
that's okay.
You've got to try. You've got to treat your coaches with respect, your teammates with respect, because that's how the real world works. And, and I think you're right. If my kid came to me and said, geez, I want to, my oldest son is doing Ironman now, triathlons. And I'm, we were at his first race and I'm a triathlete. It was hard for me to watch a race and not be in a race, but, and it's, he got done with that first one. I was like, well, that's a lot longer than I remember.
It's slightly different. I think the
Yeah.
coach thing is really important, though, for them to
Yeah.
understand that there is someone in that position that you need to listen to, and they're not there to be your friend, like they're to be the coach. I know I got the boys into basketball a while ago, and I'd heard that a lot of parents had complained about the coach, and I went there and watched the coach, and I'm like, I love this guy. He takes no crap. He's very clear in his directions, and all his parents didn't like it. I'm like, this guy is brilliant. Like, he's just being a stern coach. He has really clear guidelines. He doesn't accept behaviour that's outside the boundaries, but he's fair and equitable. Where's the problem here? And the kids responded to it. They were great. So, look, I think having a coach has been really, really good for them. Team sports was something we really got into early.
Yeah.
And much in all, as I say, I want them to make their own decisions. I may have tipped the scales a little bit we've got them into jiu-jitsu this year. I may have cherry-picked some really good videos to sell the dream a bit, but I knew that it was a skill that I wanted them to have. So, and they've got into it, and they're loving it. It's been really good for them too.
Well, so let's pivot a bit from the experiences you've gathered. You've started a couple of businesses. Like you said, you're a pharmacist by training. So intellectually, you've got the ability to capture and digest a large amount of information. Then you've pushed your body to extremes in ways most people can't resonate. Now you're helping companies and individuals inside those organizations rethink. And I think you said motivations of feeling, disciplines of skill, ideal and skills. Is that correct?
Yeah,
did I get that right?
Spot on.
So I resonate extremely with that. I ran my own fitness company for 10 years, right? So my job was to help people get fit.
Yep.
And it was a very frustrating job.
Been there and done that, yeah.
Right? I mean, you ran a CrossFit gym, and I had to rethink my approach because I naturally like to do these things. If it's 98 degrees and my workout's in the garage today, I go do my workout.
Yeah.
And I kind of relish in the pain and the discomfort. And if I'm going to do 10 of that particular, I'm going to do 10, right? I'm going to get them done. Yeah. My wife likes to tell me, you're psycho. Most people don't like that. So
there may be something to that comment.
There may be something to it, right? So I see the things you've done and know that, and this is, I think, for both of us, and I'm not trying to put myself in your category, it's a different category. But for both of us, it's important to remember that when we walk into the room of a corporation and a company, there's a serious bell curve around the people that are there, right? There are people on the far right side of the bell curve. Hey, Paul Watkins coming, man. I saw his TED. I know the climbs he did, and I'm all about it. And there are people who've never heard of you, and that they're like, I couldn't even imagine, nor do I want to. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yet your message is to try to inspire them where they are to be a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
Without scaring them to think that the only way to do that is to go climb Everest.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you, and by the way, I think your recent post style where you're taking something you've read, presenting it with kind of this look on your face, like, here it is. Do with it what you want. I thought it was interesting. I think that's a great way to pull that audience in, right? It's intellectual, it's thought-provoking. It has nothing to do with fitness or adventure racing. How are people responding to your message in your keynotes and your training? How's that worked, and how are you tweaking your method?
Yeah, it's a really good observation because I'm at that fringe end of, let's go run a 600-kilometer marathon. I think that's a great idea. And obviously a lot of people will go, you're an idiot, and I disconnect. What I try and do is show all the behind the scenes stuff of where it's all gone wrong. So here's my background. I'm not genetically gifted. I don't have, some crazy VO2 max. Here's me in high school. Look at this guy, absolute nerd. And then here's this climb that I absolutely failed at and couldn't get to the summit. And here's this climb that went completely wrong. And here's this race that went wrong. What are the lessons in that? What did the toolbox end up looking like? Then I had this climb that went well and this race that went well. Why did they go that way and those went that way? And then we pull that apart and have a look at it. So what I really try and do is, rather than going to go, I'm going to teach this group of people how to be a better principal or better lawyers or better engineers or whatever it is. You hired humans. You didn't hire employees, you hired humans. Let's give you better humans, and then you'll get the result after that. So I can be a little higher up the scale in, like, when I talk about things like anti-fragility. So we're moving from being fragile to being resilient, and, resilience, the buzzword of the day. Whereas I think there's a whole conversation beyond that. Resilient is about, oh, you survived, you can get back to where you were before. Whereas I think there's a conversation beyond that about how do you thrive in difficulty and hard times and complex situations. And that can be a tricky conversation for some people to have. So I've got to balance that with giving some people reality of, here is where you are. And I've been there too. And that's really normal, and that's okay. Let's look at the tools around how you navigate some of those decisions. You can have the best wellness program in the world as a corporation, but if Paul still gets up in the morning and looks in the mirror and doesn't like what he sees, or tells himself a story that he's crap and he can't do anything, you can have all the wellness programs in the world. It's not going to change Paul's behavior.
Sure.
So my job is to make Paul feel like a better human. What tools can I give him so he wakes up and goes, yeah, I'm going to have a go at that. Or maybe I can do that. And suddenly that expands their mindset around behaviors and what they can do and what they can't do, performance. Now you've got a different kettle of humans that you're dealing with at work, and you can drive performance versus thinking, I've got employees, how do I squeeze the employees to get a better outcome? So in a roundabout way, it really is, how do these people build better stories? How do these people realize that they're a work in progress and that normal people do abnormal things? It's not they're all abnormal freaks. No, some of them are just normal people with, their mums and their dads and what have you, who've given themselves an opportunity to go out and try some stuff. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's normal. So that's how I try and balance that ledger between, you need the story because it's really cool, but it's also the vehicle to explain all the background as well. And then where do they fit into that scale?
So this next question could be an entire episode, but I want to drill into it a little bit. Having walked a little bit in your shoes in front of an audience, whether it's a large group or a small group, trying to tap into that side, right? Do you find that people who are on the far left side of the spectrum, right? They've never contemplated any type of adventure race or any kind of a physical challenge, to get them to be, I think, as you mentioned, resilience is kind of a good first start. Hey, you got through that.
Yeah.
You didn't think you could do that. You got through that. So let's look at that. That's great, right? You did something you didn't think you could do. And then moving into the thriving portion, right, which is different. Would you suggest that the first place they need to start is something physical?
I think it is, but I think it's not as simple as that. Like, I think the physicality of something is a gateway drug to understanding the mentality behind why
That's
you
what I
did
was
that
going
and
for.
your capacity to do it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I think really I like the physical side of it, because there's a whole host of things you can do that are free, that require no equipment.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in a certain background or anything. Like, literally, you can go outside and walk your dog, or you can go for a run or do burpees in your backyard or whatever. You don't need anything at all. Socioeconomically, anything you can, that's accessible for everyone, and it gives them a gateway to unlock some stuff upstairs to go, okay, I didn't think I'd do that, but I did that, or that was as horrible as I thought it was going to be, but I still did it. So I like that just as the vehicle, because it's accessible and people can understand it, and most people have had to experience it in some way, shape, or form at some point.
Yep. When you think about that first step, when you're training a company, are you training a large group of individuals, or is it more?
It varies, yeah.
Okay. It varies. Now, how would you, if you're in a room with 20 people and you can see the 2 or 3 people on the left-hand side that just aren't getting this, do you offer the opportunity for them to meet with you one-on-one so you can get a little more focused with them, or are you kind of just doing a talk and moving on to the next group?
It depends on what the business wants. Like, sometimes it's a case of you're there and you do the song and dance, and then you move on and the business takes from it what it does.
Sure.
And then sometimes we come out, we do presentations, and then you follow up with some tools and skill building stuff post that. And the tools and skill building things are generally not, how do I become more organizationally efficient, or how do I have a better to-do list? It's about, hey, let's talk about how you guys breathe and move, because we're gonna fix some foundational stuff here and actually get you to feel better. If I can get you to understand how to sleep better, you're going to feel better right out of the gate. So when I approach businesses, it's a case of going, I don't want to teach Pete to be better between 9 and 5. I need to teach Pete how to be better 24/7, because then you get buy-in. It's, Paul's here to tell us to be better lawyers because HR want us to be better lawyers. No, Paul's here because we want Pete to feel really good about his entire life, because that's when you get the return at work, not be a better employee. That's not going to help. How do you feel about yourself and your sleep and your energy and how your relationships are going and the story that's up here playing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Let's tap into that. And then you get that buy-in because people go, oh, it's about me as me, not me as employee number whatever. I think that's some of the most interesting feedback I've got, where you speak to, the organizer, the HR or the CEO, whoever it is afterwards. What was the feedback? And quite often people go, oh, the people loved it because I said it was about me. It wasn't about me, the employee. It was about me being me. And how do I get better at that? And then that ticks into all the other things. It comes back to the thing of you can have all the wellness programs you want, but if you still feel crap about yourself, you can give people all the yoga sessions and yoga bars in the world. It's not going to change unless you change them. So that's where we try and tap into.
What's typically the biggest barrier to someone making the first move in improving who they are? What's the hardest thing for them to do, do you see?
I describe it as the story they tell themselves, which really is just how they structure their belief in themselves. Like, how do they see themselves as an individual? And it's why I try and use a lot of humor, self-deprecating humor, and failure examples when I talk to people so that they get the humor kind of drops the guard a little bit. And then the stories of here's where I screwed up and here's where I was normal and here's what I learned out of that. That helps people start going, okay, now I can see a little bit of myself there, not the 600-kilometer stuff, but I can see that he was unhealthy or was really self-conscious about this role or how this paid out, or wow, that really didn't work for him at all, like it was a failure, and that's okay. And he's still up there talking about it. Yeah, it's okay to screw it up because you're going to fail. You're going to get it wrong. It's not going to pan out the way you thought it would, and that's going to happen repeatedly, and that makes you normal, and that's okay. That's a message I really try and hammer home, particularly with schools, with high school students. Like, you're going to screw it up, and that's okay. That makes you normal. You've got time. This is part of the process. So let's talk about what we put in the toolkit and how you pick yourself up and you learn from those things and you move forward and go from there. I'm not sure if I answered your question then or not.
No, you did. And I think it's important to the fact that you're helping them reshape their story by letting them know, hey, you may think that you're here and I'm here, but guess what? I started right next to you. Right. I mean, I started here.
Yeah.
And I made a couple steps forward. It ended up a couple steps back, couple steps forward, couple steps back. And it's important for people to recognize that, hey, when you walk your dog around the block for the first time, you've never made it around the block, and you get home, how do you think you're going to feel? You probably
the dog's going to be stoked.
Right? Dog's going to be pretty excited, and you're going to feel pretty good. Like you're not going to regret that.
Nope.
Right. The question is, will you get up and do it again the next day?
Yeah.
Right. And maybe you say, well, I made it around the block. Tomorrow I'm going to make it around the block into the next stop sign. Right. That's how you show that increment. And now your story changes.
Yeah.
Yes, your story today is I've already made it around the block. I've got that in me.
Yeah.
And I think the other area that I found some success with is really tapping into, guess what? To your point, if you've never exercised or athletic in high school, you never really turned on those endorphins and those chemicals in your body. You found them in different ways, right? If you were in debate and doing other things and you're challenging your mind, but boy, the chemicals you release through physical exertion, it's the greatest drug in the world, right? It's literally the greatest drug in the world.
Yep.
And it's free.
Yep. It's accessible.
It's free. Yeah. And then guess what? Now your spouse sees that you did that.
Yeah.
And your kids see that you did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that message right there, kids love you unconditionally.
Yeah.
They're also rooting for you. They're your biggest fans. And when they see you succeed after some effort, it tells them they can too.
Yeah. One of the things when I'm talking to parents about this kind of stuff is you go, remember that you're watching your kids grow up, but your kids are watching you grow up. Like, it's not like you had a child and all of a sudden, you're officially an adult now. Congratulations, you've made it. It's like, no, you're still figuring it out. Like, I'm 48. I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, you're growing up just at the same pace that they, or at the same time that they are. So you have to give yourself some license to learn. Like this is a continuing education role here. Like you don't go, I've got a child, I'm now a father, and we're done. Well, no, now the journey starts. Like you're still developing, and you have to come at it with that mindset as well.
Yeah, and they mirror you, right? If you sit,
Oh, yeah.
they sit. If you stand, they stand. If you walk, they walk. If you run, they run.
Yep. Yeah.
And
you
it's
hear your words
incredible.
coming out of their mouth, and
And they may not know why they're doing it. That's, by the way, I think people forget that's kind of the point of parenting sometimes.
yeah.
They don't have to understand why just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't necessarily. Well, dad sweats every day. I don't have to understand why yet, but it's just what you do.
Yeah. That's normal. Yeah.
It's just what you do.
Yeah.
Looking at all the races you've done, I love how you describe the fact that you've got different things on the other side of the ledger now, right? You've got a family, you've got kids, you've got responsibilities. How do you temper and change the adventurous side of your brain? How are you going to eventually, when your kids become teenagers, incorporate them into that?
I haven't thought about incorporating them into that in that sense of going, I'm waiting to see who they become and what they want to do. And just,
Sure.
I will take that as that adventure evolves and see where that goes. And that's been my entire ethos right from the start. Like each adventure has been just stacked on what happened before it versus, I've got a 9-step plan of getting to this race. So in terms of the kids, I don't know. I may well be guided by them to a large degree of what do they want to do and where do they want to go and what does that look like. For me, I guess the only concrete pre-plan is that I want to be in a condition that I can do whatever they want to do.
Yes.
I don't want to be the dad who's like, I can't jump on a bike and ride it way over there with you or go for a run with you or whatever. It's like, nah. If they're like, Dad, can we go for a bike ride to wherever? Yeah, cool, let's go.
Yeah.
Like I want to be in that position and in that condition that I can do that. I often tell in talks like a very unpopular story of going, if you've got young kids and you're at a barbie and you're sitting in your chair and the footy goes out on the road and your child is running to get it, now is the time where all the decisions about whether you went to get up and go for a run or take care of your mobility or your sleep or all those things, the bill just came due for that right now. And one of you is going to pay it. So when are we paying that bill?
So
and it's not very popular, but it's true. It's like your decision of can I get out of that chair and get to that kid before he gets to that road because the guy in the car is reading his phone. That's an accumulation of all the choices you've made up to that point, and that bill is now due. And so
by
that
the
always
way,
reminds me going, hey, you're paying into that ledger today, so that at that moment where they need you, you've paid that in full already, and we're okay.
I saw a video on Instagram yesterday where that actually happened.
Yeah, and look, I made it up as a fictitious story just to prove a point.
That exact thing happened.
Yeah.
It's a woman. She's pulled her stroller up with her baby in it.
I have seen that, and she can't get up to get it, can she?
She she trips, and the stroller rolls down the road into the expressway, not just to the expressway.
Yeah.
And she can't get up. And she's watching. She tries to get up. She can't get up. And just before it happens, a guy sees it, darts out, grabs the stroller, and saves the baby.
Yeah.
And the message in the video is the same thing as like, look, you have one job.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't take it seriously, at some point that bill's going to come due for either them or you. And it's sad. Now, that's an extreme situation. A lot of people go, well, that would never happen. Fine. But the metaphor is true. And I saw another really interesting post that said physical health, musculoskeletal structure, being fit, toned, whatever, is the greatest form of expressing the fact that you can be counted on to do the hard things.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up fit, right? So if you're physically fit, and you walk into a room, people will make a lot of assumptions about you that are probably accurate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That person can put in the time over a long period of time and do the hard things.
Yeah.
And the opposite is also true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder how much that psychologically resonates with your kids, with the fact that they know that as a parent, mum or dad or whoever is capable, that dad can pick that up, or he can run with us, or he can keep up with me on the bike, or he can turn up to the sport day and keep up with all the other dads, or whatever it is. I wonder how much that resonates somewhere in the back of their mind, knowing that the parent, whoever that is is someone that I can rely on in that capacity, because I've always been able to rely on them in that capacity because they've been in the shape where they can do those things.
Yeah.
You don't know what buckets you're paying into that aren't your buckets at all.
I can tell you, having my daughter's almost 30, my oldest son's 26, and my youngest one's 21. And now I'm watching my daughter and her husband, who's also very fit, very smart, raise, almost a 2-year-old boy. And I'm watching how they live their life. And I don't think there's any doubt that your kids pay attention to whether or not you're physically capable.
Yeah.
My dad was an all-American wrestler, grew up on a farm, could build, change, do just about anything with it, with his hands. And he was always fit, always ran when I was a kid, always stayed in shape. My mom went the opposite direction after she became morbidly obese for 30 years.
Right.
I love my mom unconditionally, but I gravitated towards my dad.
Yeah.
And his behavior. That was a behavior I wanted to emulate. I did not want to emulate this.
Yeah.
I have 2 sisters who grew up in a very confused environment because you want to emulate your mom, but you couldn't, and they struggled with that.
Yeah.
So there's no question. I think your kids, to your point, they want to know that you can play with them and their friends, that you can participate as they grow older and be athletic. But I think the area where they really, really maybe can't verbalize it or understand is they also know you can protect them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing. Like, my dad's got this. I know it would be taken care of, and my wife knows it. And my wife is a kind of a badass too. So they know that she's, yeah, it does help. But just the fact that they know that it's what you do, right? You just, you do the workout, you eat right. And that allows you to, my wife was her mom's caregiver for 5 years. And when her dad was sick, I was the only one that could lift him up and take him from the nursing home or anywhere because I could lift him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my kids saw that. So they just know that it enables you to do a lot of other things you can't. And by the way, I could get hit by a truck tomorrow. I could break my leg. I could hurt my back. All sorts of things can happen.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go back to the almost very first thing you said on the podcast, which is when you were in Nepal and you were doing your first trek and you looked around and said, I'm here because I can be.
Yeah.
A lot of other people, but I have the physical capability, the mental capability, and the means. I need to leverage that.
Yeah. Or how dare you waste it? Like,
so
what a
important.
privilege.
Why
that
waste
you can
it?
do that. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, my brother-in-law passed away of ALS 7 years ago. And I know when I'm not kind of motivated to get up early or do the workout or do the hard thing, I think about Jim and I'm like, he would give anything, would have given anything to do the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So perspective is always very, very helpful.
Yeah. And it's a good point that people think you're super motivated all the time. You're not.
No.
Like, that alarm goes off. I'm not excited about it. There's more days than the majority of the days where you're doing that workout. Like, it's hard yards, but that's the behavior and that's the discipline. So we're not running around rah every day. You're weirdos because you love doing it. I love how it makes me feel, but I don't necessarily enjoy having to make the sacrifices to get the work done, but I know the value of the work. So that's, that pointing out to people, you don't have to be excited about it. I'm not excited about it quite often, but I know the value of it and the importance of it. So we do. That's the discipline.
And we have to find ways to enable that we can do that from a long-term perspective. I see all these 90-day challenges, 70-day challenges, 75 hard. I'm always like, well, what happens on day 76?
Yeah, don't start me. Don't stop me.
You don't have to stop. You don't have to go from 0 to 2 workouts a day, read 3 books, meditate for this. There's no way you can do that and be a father and a husband the rest of your life.
No.
So why not pick up? No, it's not. And my wife likes to exercise with other people. She's social like that. That's part of her. When I work out at home by myself, which I love, no problem doing that. But when I was at the gym, I don't want to talk to anybody. I have an hour. This is not social time. I'm in, I'm out, and I'm not trying to be rude. I'm very focused on what I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And for some people, that doesn't work, right? So find a buddy, go for a walk or a bike or a run with them and talk and do whatever you need to do if that's how it gets you out of bed and gets you motivated.
Yeah. Find the vehicle that works for you and then go do that. Yeah.
So last question. Do you plan on coming to the States to do any kind of an event or a talk or a coaching session? Has anybody asked you yet?
No one's asked me yet, but you never know. Like again, it's that thing of going, you just chase opportunities, you open doors and you go through them and you see what happens.
Love it.
I don't know. I hope so. I'm sure something will come up. So they're the things of, you leave the doors open, you create opportunities yourself, and then away you go. I often talk to people about the fact that serendipity has a surface area and you can affect that. Like luck is less likely, cosmic universe force than it is 1,000 little decisions you made over the months and years leading up to the point where you suddenly got lucky. Like it's more likely a stack of those decisions. So I just keep working on building those decisions and those touch points to allow those doors to open to go, hey, that race is on and it fits the family, it fits what I want to do and it works, or that business opportunity is there and we can make that happen and link a few things together and away you go. You put yourself in a position where those things are more likely to happen. Actually, I've got a post come up this morning talking about you don't get what you deserve, you get what is probable. So, that whole thing of, if you work hard, you'll get what you deserve. Yeah. Well, no, not necessarily. Like there's plenty of people who work their ass off and didn't make it. It's you get what is probable and you can affect that to a certain degree. So you work on that and go from there. So answer your question, don't know, hope so.
I'm very glad we did this because I was a big fan of your content and I'm going to be even bigger because I now understand more behind the story and the motivations and who you are as a person. And it's, I'm not often pleasantly surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
I appreciate it. I really genuinely appreciate the invite and I love the fact that we actually get to sit down and have a conversation like this that is free-flowing, but about really important stuff. It's not, how do we get up and do 100 burpees? No, how do you be a better human and a better parent or a dad or whatever it is, and how do you balance all those influences in your life? And that's why I really enjoy these kind of conversations where you just sit down and go, it's open slate, let's talk about stuff and see where we go.
Well, I'm going to post how to reach you in the show notes, and I'm going to post this on LinkedIn too when we get this edited because I think when I do post it, I'm going to post it in an unusual way. Normally I post a snippet. I'm going to post the episode and a link to it because I want other organizations to figure out how to get you in front of their teams.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I like the idea that we're going to help you create better humans, not just better employees.
That's the goal. It helps me become a better human as I go. It's good for me. Like it's part therapy.
No, it's great. Well, Paul, thanks again. Wonderful episode, as far better than I could have expected it to be. Thanks for the time. We'll be following your next race and your posts, and once again, appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Thanks for checking out Eating Crow. Like and subscribe so you never miss a video.